You're tuned to Arts Express, and next up on the program, In the Book Corner. From opinion essays to the macabre, academic research to sports journalism, Martin Smith is a writer who stretches boundaries while always committed politically as a millennial to making sense of this world for his generation. And his latest fascinating work is a children's book, Little Karl, conveying to young audiences the revolutionary principles of Karl Marx as he may have formulated them growing up himself. Smith also shares thoughts during our conversation about why 3 states he's grown up and lived in and knows well, Tennessee, Ohio, and now Pennsylvania, all voted for Trump. And no, it's not about Russia, along with Smith's notion of what Karl Marx would have said about that strange presidential election that just took place. First, Martin Smith reads Little Karl, then our conversation.
This is a reading of Little Karl by the author M. Earl Smith. Little Karl and his mother were out for a walk one fine Sunday morning. It was a sunny day, perfect for strolling and taking in the sights of the city. One of Little Karl's favorite things to do was ask his mother questions. After all, there was so much to know, and so little that he knew. His mother always did her best to answer, although, to be fair, Little Karl asked a lot of questions. As they walked, they soon came across a poor man asleep in the street. Little Karl looked at his mother, confused. Why doesn't he go home to sleep? His mother shook her head. Because, Little Karl, he does not have a home. He hasn't worked hard enough for it. Shouldn't everyone have a home? Little Karl thought. As they walked on, they came upon a puppy. The little puppy barked happily, and Little Karl petted it and laughed. He could not help but notice how skinny the puppy was. His mother scolded him. Little Karl, leave that puppy alone. It's not had enough food, and it's probably sick. Shouldn't everyone have food? Little Karl thought. They walked on and soon came upon a woman with a sign that said, We'll work for food. Little Karl tugged at the hem of his mother's dress. Why doesn't anyone hire this woman? His mother rolled her eyes. Because she has no skill or schooling. Why should she have a job? Shouldn't everyone have work? Little Karl thought. Little Karl and his mother walked on. Soon they came across a man asleep on a bench. He was still in his dirty work uniform. Little Karl cleared his throat. Mother, why is that man sleeping on that bench? Is he homeless too? Little Karl's mother sighed. No, Little Karl, I'm sure he has a home. Look at his uniform, sweet child. He has a job. I'm sure it's the type where he has to work very hard. Should people have to work so hard? Little Karl thought. Little Karl and his mother rounded a corner. There stood a boy, screaming about loaves of bread for sale. As hard as he tried, Karl's mother did not buy a loaf. Little Karl stared at the little boy in wonder. Mother, why are those children working? I don't work. Little Karl's mother groaned. His family is not like ours. He must work so that they can eat. Why should children have to work? Little Karl thought. As they walked on, Little Karl noticed a couple in an alley. The girl was well dressed yet crying. The young man looked at her in agony, his plain clothes showing how poor he was. Little Karl could not help but stare. Mother, why are they so upset? Little Karl's mother shook her head. He says he loves her, but he is the son of a farmer and she the daughter of a great count. They can never wed. Shouldn't people love whomever they want? Little Karl thought. As they passed the church, one of the solemn-looking priests came out to greet Little Karl's mother. They left Little Karl standing alone for a moment, speaking in quiet tones. When Little Karl's mother returned, she looked rather upset. What's wrong, Mother? Little Karl asked. She waved her hand, dismissing his worry. Nothing, sweet child. We must always remember that God wants us to pay our tithes. Why does only the priest know what God wants? Little Karl thought. Little Karl's mother decided to cheer him up. Stopping in front of a vendor, she waited as another mother bought her little boy a small apple. When it was Little Karl's turn, his mother got him the biggest apple the vendor had. Before he could ask, she laughed. Your father does well, Little Karl, and we have the money to afford bigger apples. Shouldn't everyone have the same amount of apples? Little Karl thought. As they rounded the corner for home, Little Karl and his mother saw a rather fat man, dressed in a nice suit. Little Karl's mother gave him a wide path. In fact, it seemed that she was doing her best to avoid him. Little Karl remained silent as she whispered, "He is the richest man in town, and he owns the factory. We do not want to upset him." Little Karl was upset. Why should my mother fear this man, and why is he more important because he owns a factory? As Little Karl and his mother went inside, his mother spoke in a stern voice. "Little Karl, it's time for your nap." Little Karl hated his naps. There was no way to ask questions as he napped. He protested, but with no luck. "Come, Little Karl, and no fuss. If you are a good boy, I shall answer 5 questions for you." Little Karl loved to ask questions. It was not long before he was settled into bed, eyes wide with excitement. Little Karl's mother offered a tired smile. "Now, my sweet boy, what are your questions?" Little Karl's face grew serious for a moment. "Mother, what if there were no poor people? Why can't we all have the things we need?" Little Karl's mother did not have an answer. Little Karl spoke again. "Mother, what if we all had clean water and medicine to make us feel better?" Little Karl's mother did not have an answer. Little Karl spoke again. "Mother, what if we could all work in peace and happiness?" Little Karl's mother coughed. She still did not have an answer. Little Karl kept talking. "And what if, Mother, there were no classes of people? What if everybody had a job? What if we were all happy and free?" Little Karl finished with a yawn. Little Karl's mother shook her head gently. "My sweet, silly boy, only a child could think of such nonsense. And just as children must have things decided for them, so must the lesser of men be ruled by the greater. It's just like your nap. I know better than you, and so nap you must. All children must nap." Little Karl rolled over, already dozing off. "Perhaps, Mother. But if the children of the world unite, we shall have nothing to lose but our naps." The end.
Thank you, Martin. When and how did the idea to write Little Karl come to you?
That is a wonderful story, actually. I'm a double major here. I do creative writing and I also do history. And most of the history work that I do is with revolutionary work, post-French Revolution. So I had this wonderful idea to write a children's book about Karl Marx. I felt strongly about the material, but it's not something I thought anybody else would. So I edited a couple of times. I sent it out to a couple of publishers. Michigan, the current publisher, found, that they were interested in it. I ended up finding the illustrator, and, the rest, I guess they say, is history.
And is Little Karl a personal story for you in any way?
I would say that it represents my political views fairly closely. I consider myself a Marxist, so a lot of those views are views that I hold, fairly dearly.
And given the chaotic history going on right now, the history in progress at this historical moment, how do you feel your book can be appreciated right now?
Oh, boy. With the election and everything else that went on, and even before that, I'll even go back to the primaries. And I've had this discussion with several people on both sides of the aisle with the way that things went for the Democratic Party. If Bernie Sanders was the candidate for the Democratic Party, and we know he's a Democratic socialist, if Bernie Sanders had been a candidate, I feel that he beats Trump by 10 or 15 points. So I feel Little Karl, especially with millennials, the word, communist or Marxist is a dirty word in most circles. The problem is most millennials have kind of seen some of that philosophy, and they looked at a lot of it and they said, that doesn't really sound bad. So I think especially among the younger generation who are, just starting to have children and are starting to become professionals, I think the book will resonate with them. At some point, we'll realize as millennials that we are the largest voting bloc out there. And when we realize that, I think some of these values can come to the forefront.
And what do you hope to teach or enlighten children about with Little Karl?
I want children to understand that different political thoughts are not necessarily these big boogeymen that they've been made out to be. It's been a fascinating couple of years as far as, reevaluating how we look at, Marxism and communism. I think the movie Trumbo was a good example of that. And I think it's important for children to be able to see all sides of the issue without bias. And that's something that just doesn't happen when it comes to Marxism. Children are told that, it's automatically this bad thing that's off limits and there's nothing that can be done about it, So I hope that children are able to look at, Little Karl and see some of these. I'm not trying to indoctrinate children, but at the same time, I feel that they deserve to be able to see it from a non-biased point of view.
What can you say about your choice of dedication that you write to the proletariat?
I have no reservations about that whatsoever. It's a book where 99% of the people, I guess, that would read the book, I mean, it's the same debate again, would consider themselves proletariat. I think there's a quote that floats around, and I can't remember exactly who said it, or I think John Steinbeck may have said it, was that the reason that, socialism hasn't taken hold is because in America is because most people don't see themselves as a repressed proletariat. They see themselves as temporarily embarrassed millionaires. And to that point, I think there needs to be that class consciousness. I think, we're all proletarians, basically. So it's important to me that the working class realizes that this is a book for them, and this is a book that they can, use, to give their children a non-biased look at, these issues.
Now, you're from 3 states, Tennessee, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and while Tennessee voted for the Republican presidential candidate in both elections, 2012, 2016, Ohio and Pennsylvania, Trump won during this election in both states, which the last time voted for Obama, and the Democrats in the last election. So what are your thoughts about that and your observations about the people you know in those states and where you've lived, especially in those 2 states that accounted for that switch this time around?
I've talked to a lot of people, and it's with Tennessee. I could have predicted Tennessee was going to go to Donald Trump from pillar to post. It was one of those things where the evangelical vote in Tennessee combined with the fact that if you look at the factors in Tennessee, I think they rank 47th in education. They rank 49th as far as life expectancy. Some of these numbers in Tennessee are just atrocious. You've got a bunch of people that feel like they are a repressed proletariat in a sense. And the appeal of what Donald Trump said, aside from, all the, horrible things that he said as far as, that were racist comments or that were, xenophobic comments, he offered plausible change, I think, to a whole section of people. And so the fact that Tennessee went, I think, 67-28 to Donald Trump doesn't surprise me at all. The same with Ohio. I mean, if you look at Ohio, and I've talked to people that are in Ohio, there is real concern about, how you're going to put food on the table and how you're going to provide for your kids and how when they go to college in 5 years, you're going to help pay for that. It's one of those things where a lot of people were, especially in Ohio, they weren't willing to come out and say, hey, I'm willing to support Donald Trump. But when you're in that voting booth and you have a voice and nobody's there to criticize you for that voice, you're going to do what you feel like is in your best self-interest. And so, especially with Ohio, with the loss of those jobs, and I hate to make a blanket statement about a state, but with the way the manufacturing section is completely crashed, I mean, places like Cleveland and Cincinnati are desolate wastelands. People are just fleeing the cities, as quickly as they can. There's no uptick as far as, manufacturing jobs or those type of sector jobs that, allow people to provide. Everything is shifted towards the service industry. You can't provide for a family on a service industry job. So when you have somebody, demagogue or not, that's out there saying, I'm going to do what I can to make your life better, as opposed to somebody that wants to sit there and call you a basket of deplorables and say that you have to have a public and a private persona and do these things that, Hillary Clinton did. I understand why Ohio went toward it. Now, Pennsylvania shocked me. Of course, I'm in the middle of Philadelphia, one of the more liberal cities in the country. And, I think the vote at, Penn, for example, among the students, I think it went something for students that voted. I think 3,900 of the students went for Penn, and I think 84 went for Trump. It was, a huge shift. But, again, there's a lot of places in, Pennsylvania where people have lost those jobs. And they've been replaced by menial service industry jobs where people aren't, treated respectfully and they're not given the opportunity to provide for their family. So election night, Pennsylvania kind of shocked me, but then I talked to some of the people I deal with here, especially some of the people that, work here on campus, that work here at Penn, that are, employees and not students, for example. And, they wanted something that represented change. And for whatever Donald Trump is, he represents a type of change. Is it a good change? Absolutely not. I don't think so. But, I mean, it's something different. And it's coming from somebody that's not, in their view, unless you're a minority or, of course, a Muslim or something like that, it's somebody that's not going to laugh at you for wanting to provide for your family. So it doesn't surprise me anymore.
And what do you think Karl Marx would have said about this election?
Karl Marx would have saw this as another step as far as on the road to late capitalism and, the fall of capitalism in general. Again, if you read the Communist Manifesto, it's not so much a thing where he says it should happen as that he says it's inevitable that it's going to happen. And bread and circuses here in the United States, they've done so much to keep us placated that, even, when we're repressing, when we suffer, when we do it out, well, there's always these things that make it just tolerable enough to where we don't feel the need to pick up arms or pick up our voices or pick up the ballot box or pick up whatever we need to pick up and march to the streets. With Donald Trump in power, that is something, people are already marching. People are already upset. People are already terrified and scared. And when you back a proletariat into a corner, they're going to fight their way out. And so I don't want to say that the election of Donald Trump was inevitable. The election of somebody of his ilk along that progression of, towards, revolution, I would say even, is inevitable. I'm not saying we're going to be in the streets tomorrow, but what I'm saying is that it's, according to what Marx would have said, it's inevitable. A Donald Trump figure would be inevitable in this political climate.
Okay, and what is next for you?
I'm actually working with the illustrator, Eric Santoli. We're working right now. I've finished the manuscript for another children's book based off of Che Guevara and the Motorcycle Diaries.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So it's a little bit, Little Karl was more of a 4 to 8 format. This one's going to be more of a 10 to 12 format, a little bit older. But we're working on how we're going to illustrate that. It's going to be a little bit different format. The illustration is going to blend in with the text. So there's that, but it never ends. So There's always something on the horizon.
And Little Karl is available from Mitchelkin Publishers at mitchelkin.com. That's MICHELKIN. And that's all we have time for today on Arts Express, Expression in the Arts. And if you'd like to express yourself too, you can write to theradiogoddess@gmail.com. Thank you to our engineer, Reggie Johnson. Till next time for Arts Express. And if you're down with the status quo, take the local. This is Prairie Miller leaving the station.